I'm coming to you having just been welcoming, I was just in my office welcoming the 250-ish college students from Nebraska that have just arrived for the March for Life tomorrow. And I know you know this. I grew up in the movement, by the way. My mom had me praying outside abortion clinics when I was a little kid. And so I'm one of only 5 people in the U.S. Senate who's never been a politician bore. I don't exactly fit there, but I do fit here. And I'm a part of your movement. And when I see what I got to see today, those 200 and some college kids from Nebraska here, I want everybody in America who doesn't understand this movement to meet a lot more of our students. Because there are so many things happening in American life that are bumpy and confusing and disconnected and disrupted and feel like they're coming apart. But one of the great things that's happening in America is, frankly, the generational change on the issue of life. Because when you get to know young people in this movement, you understand what we also know from polling data. And by the way, polling data isn't what matters. What matters is babies and moms and science and universal human dignity. But it's also interesting at the level of polling data to recognize that teens and 20-somethings are right now a lot more pro-life than the two generations that come before them. Why is that? First of all, yeah, let's clap. I hear somebody in row 4 trying to say, let's celebrate that wonderful providence. But what's happening? I think one of the things that's happening as our culture becomes more image-based, which has lots and lots of challenges associated with us, staying in a long-form text through chapter 3 and 4 and 5 for some big paper you have due at school in 2 weeks might be more challenging in an image-based culture. But one of the things that's great right now in this movement is we sit at a technological moment where people are seeing more what is happening inside mom's tummy as a baby grows and develops. And you know what? You can't deny that that's a baby when you look at the picture of those fingers and toes developing and that heart beating. And we sit at the precipice of a moment where you're going to be able to have sonogram technology that's about the size of your iPhone and it connects to your iPhone. And people are going to see even more what's happening in utero in that developmental stage. And we see younger generations becoming more pro-life as they're connected to that. And so when you come to Washington, D.C., as you are doing now, to advocate and express your First Amendment rights, and you just had ADF here before, and they do really good and important work, and I serve in the Senate for a 6-year term, and there's work and responsibilities and vocation that I have to advocate there. But one of the dangers about coming to Washington, D.C., connected to the march, is that sometimes our friends can hear that as if we think that legislation and courts are the center of this movement, and they are not. There's a whole bunch of stuff that needs to happen in the courts. There's a whole bunch of stuff that needs to happen in our civics to make sure the next generation understands religious liberty and freedom of speech and freedom of assembly and the right of protest, as so many of you rightly engage in and express your First Amendment rights and freedoms. We need to do those things, and we need to advance legislation. We need to pass the pain-capable legislation that the House has passed. We need to pass that in the Senate. I'm the lead sponsor in the Senate of the Born Alive bill. We need to pass that legislation. There's a whole bunch of things we need to do legislatively and in terms of the courts, and yet that is not the center of this movement. The center of this movement is actually in affirming and celebrating a really basic truth, which is that we believe in universal human dignity, and we believe in babies, and we believe in moms, and we believe in science. And when you believe in those things, and when you celebrate life, and when you love your neighbor, it means you actually change hearts and minds. And we need to change legislation as well, but the fundamental thing we need to do is we need to change hearts and minds. And there's a lot of that happening right now in this country among the younger generation. And so as you go out and march tomorrow, be encouraged, be of good cheer by some of these young people that you're going to see, because we are actually winning this movement, even though we're not yet winning legislatively and in the courts. But we are winning in this movement by love, because love is compelling. Love is persuasive. And ultimately, love is what's really true here. When you scan the globe, there are lots of bad things happening in the world as an attack on life. When you think about how bizarre it is that the U.S. is one of only 4 countries on the globe that allows elective abortion at any time for any reason. There are only 4 countries on the globe that do that. Us, China, North Korea, and Vietnam. What doesn't fit here? These are some of the biggest human rights abusers on the globe. The other 195 countries don't do that. There are only 3 countries that are not in that list of 4 that allow abortion after 24 months. You add Singapore and the Netherlands and Canada to that list. We are thus one of only 7 countries that have abortion after 24 months. That is a scary issue, a scary peer set to be a part of. And it's a shame for us. And you look at some of the troubling things that are happening when you have Denmark and Iceland now competing to brag about who's closer to having a 100% Down syndrome-free society. Do you know that? In Denmark and Iceland, there are different groups that brag, we're closer to getting to 100% than anybody else. We're going to be at 100% Down syndrome free. What does that mean? Does it mean we've had this marvelous, near miraculous scientific breakthrough that we've solved the genetic disorder that causes these problems for our special needs population? No, it means they're just killing all the babies when they find out they have Down syndrome. In France right now, you may know that there's a legal battle going on in France because of this ad. There's a public service ad called Dear Future Mommy. And it's explaining that if you get an ultrasound and you find that you have a Down syndrome baby that you're carrying, dear future mommy, guess what? The baby you have is going to have some challenges. The baby you have is going to have some deficiencies. But you know what the baby you have is going to have? The ability to love you. The ability to hug you, the fact that they're created in the image of God with human dignity. That's what that baby in your stomach has. That's the dignity that he or she possesses. And you know what's happening in France? There's a movement in the courts to make that ad illegal, to show a picture of a Down syndrome baby become 5-year-old, become 10-year-old, become 15-year-old, and speak and say, I'm a human being. There's a movement in France to say that should be illegal. There isn't free speech to say that because somebody else who may have aborted a Down syndrome baby may find it emotionally traumatic to have to encounter an ad that says, this was the dignity of the baby that you were carrying. And we should have love, not just for the moms who are struggling with an unplanned pregnancy, and not just for the babies, whether with special needs or not, but we should have lots of love for moms who do have the grief and the guilt of having gone through this in the past. And that's what I see in this movement in our country. That's what I see among the young people that you're going to get a march with tomorrow, is a movement that understands we're not primarily about power. We're primarily about babies, about science, about moms, and a basic truth about universal human dignity. And it's a special movement that you're a part of. And be of good cheer that a movement based on love will ultimately win. And that's the movement that you have here.